Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Spiritual Journalist. I'm so grateful you found us here, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to today's guest. Her name is Brett Blackburn, and she is a psychic, a medium, a channel. She gives readings to people. She's been using her intuition for more than 16 years now to provide readings and give clarity to other people. And today she's teaching us how to tap into our own intuition. So as you're on a spiritual path, you probably heard, trust your intuition, follow your intuition. But how do you do that? Today, Brett's going to give us some pointers. So let's get started. I've always been a deeply curious person, talking with anyone who would listen and soaking in as much information as possible. So it's no surprise my love for storytelling led me to a career in journalism. But after nearly a decade working in newsrooms across the West Coast, I realized I wanted to start asking questions you probably wouldn't see on your local news. So I left my job as a morning TV reporter and started The Spiritual Journalist. This isn't just a YouTube channel, podcast, website, or social media page. This is a live conversation where you get to ask questions too, because I'm not the expert. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. My goal is to connect you with people who have profound experiences and inspirational stories to share. And we'll definitely mix a little astrology in too. So if you're like me, you have this insatiable curiosity and you love deep conversations too, well, this is the place for you. Together each week, we'll explore everything from crystals and tarot to mental health and the environment. There are no wrong questions here. My ultimate goal is for you to come away from each episode with a new perspective and an expanded consciousness. This is a channel for the collective. This is a community for the curious. This is The Spiritual Journalist. Hello.
Hi, Olivia. How you doing?
Great. I'm so excited to chat with you today and just to introduce you to my community because we're friends. We chat on a weekly basis outside of technology, but you have so much wisdom to share. So I'm really excited.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. So I love to start these conversations with a look at your birth chart to get an idea of your energy. We'll go into your story in a bit, but this is just a fun little icebreaker, if you will.
Great,
and
great.
I just learned you've never had a full astrology reading.
No, not at all.
Okay. So we'll just go over the basics. Off camera, we can do a deeper reading together. But you will start with your big three. So your sun, moon, and rising. So are you familiar with like the sun, moon, rising concept? Okay. I figured. So you're a Gemini rising, and your Mercury is actually really close to your rising sign. We'll talk about what's going on in your 12th house in a second, but Gemini rising makes you social, outgoing, a little bit chatty. You probably really like to, attain new information, but you're probably really good at talking to people. Like when you are out in a social setting, you can kind of shapeshift, be with whoever you need to be whoever you need to be. And that's kind of the first impression you give off, just being a little bit chatty and also, like, who is she? Like, is she this? Is she that? Gemini has like a lot of different personalities, but you're a Taurus sun. And the more I get to know you, I totally see your Taurus sun come out. Taurus energy loves comfort, loves their home environment, stability,
Mhm.
sensuality. Even like behind you, the setup is just curated and comfortable and beautiful. Very, very Taurus. Um, and your sun is in your 12th house. So the 12th house is all about other realms, psychic abilities.
Mm.
It's kind of what can be felt but not seen. Kind of beyond the veil is the 12th house. So your sun being in your 12th house just totally makes sense with you being an intuitive, being a psychic. Like that's your personality. That's who you are. And your Mercury is also in the 12th house, and Mercury is how we communicate. So your Mercury being in Gemini, it's at home in Gemini, and you have great communication skills, and you can probably be very clear and bring through a lot of information.
Mm.
But where you're bringing it from is the 12th house, which is not of this world, right? And so I'm excited for people to hear your story too and understand that that's kind of been part of your life, your whole life.
Yes.
But your moon is in Aquarius. And it's actually the MC is the midheaven. So the highest point in your career, the most visible point of your life is represented by the midheaven. And your moon is right there. So an Aquarius moon, you know, you like your space, you're nurtured by your space. You probably need to have your time to like check out and do your own thing.
Yeah.
And also in like our moon is our internal self, our emotions. Deep down, you're like, no, I'm a weirdo. Like I'm very different from other people. I might come
Yes.
across as like, you know, light and chatty and put together with my Taurus sun. But when people really get to know me, like I'm really weird and have all these weird perspectives. The
Sounds
moon
like
is
me.
also right. The moon is also linked to our intuition. And I love that your moon is so close to your midheaven because that just tells me that your intuition will be a very big part of your career. And it already is, but this very high level of visibility. And your moon being in the 9th house is all about expansion. So
Mm.
learning new things, traveling, going to new places, having expansive opportunities really nurture your soul and kind of like light up that inner weirdo in you.
Yes.
um, your, let's see, your Mars is at 0 degrees Libra. So you have a stellium in Libra. And Mars in Libra is interesting. I have Mars in Libra too. It might make you a little bit like indecisive about which action to take. You probably like to weigh all of the perspectives or the options before you act on something. You also
Mhm.
have Saturn in Libra. You have Jupiter in Scorpio, which is really interesting. Jupiter is like our abundance, and Scorpio is intuition as well, depth. So being able to like go deep with people, being able to have intimate connections is where a lot of your abundance comes from. And I won't go through all of your placements because we could be here all day, but Venus and Aries in the 11th house, you love hard, you're very direct with the people you love, you're just like willing to tell them I love you, love your community with it being in the 11th house. Probably are attracted to and drawn to other like kind of weird people, which I know
Yeah.
to be true because
Yes.
we're in the same friend group.
Yep.
um, and I will let you know that your North Node is in Cancer, and our North Node is like the direction or purpose, what we're here to learn, the energy we're meant to embody more. So your South Node's in Capricorn, which means you're probably very comfortable around Capricorn energy, being more practical, being more stable, very earthy, like your Taurus sun, you know, just kind of being matter of fact. But
Yeah.
what you're here to become is the mother, the intuitive, the nurturer. So the older you get, the more motherly you'll probably become. And of course, you are already a mother, so you're already doing it.
Yes.
And then the major pattern I have to point out in your chart is this giant green triangle that you're seeing, which is called a grand trine. And so you have placements in air signs around your chart. It's an air trine. So Gemini placements, Aquarius placements, Libra placements. And actually your Jupiter, or excuse me, your Saturn is part of that air trine. So, and your moon and your rising. Really interesting, those 3 planets. But just in general, like an overview is that communication comes really naturally to you with an air trine. You like to gather new information. You like to talk to other people. You like to see different perspectives. That's kind of the dominating pattern in your chart. And a lot of lessons have probably come from your ability to communicate and take in new perspectives and new information too. So
That
yeah.
all really resonates. It really
Oh,
resonates.
good. Do you have any
Yes,
other
yes.
questions or anything else you want to point out?
No, but we're definitely going to go deeper in an individual session later. We
Yes,
do. Yeah.
100%. All right, so now I want to learn about you. And if you're joining us live today, feel free to ask questions throughout the conversation, ask for clarification if you need any. But I'm really excited to hear more of your story.
Yeah.
Let's just start from the beginning. You
Okay.
know, I think it's really interesting that we talked about your Aquarius moon because children tend to show their moon signs for like the first 5-ish years because, kids are just balls of emotion and intuition, right? They're all
Yeah.
emotion. So were you a weird kid? Because that's kind of what I see in your chart.
I was a weird kid, but not everybody knew I was a weird kid. So, basically, when I kind of figured out I had some other slightly different abilities or weird abilities, let's say, I was about 4 years old. I had an imaginary friend, and I always say that I was so fortunate because my parents didn't think that was weird, and they were always very supportive of me having an imaginary friend. And I had this was more than imaginary friend, obviously, but it was a spirit guide that came to me, and her name was Julie, and she would come, and I always say she came from the attic, but it was really like she was kind of coming from above, and she would just come and talk to me, and tell me things, and it didn't seem weird at all. It just seemed completely natural. And then she kind of disappeared after a little while. And then as I just got older, I was always really interested in reading just, you know, all this all the stuff that we love, whether it was about past lives or intuition or psychic abilities. And then I actually started doing Reiki pretty young. And I did that for a while and I realized, wait, I'm doing way more than Reiki. And I was getting all kinds of like information and visuals and pictures and doing all kinds of like other healing and everything. And then I was like, maybe so, and I actually started doing readings then. And then I was like, maybe I need to kind of be able to explain what this is or what I'm doing to other people. So I actually took some kind of classes when I lived in San Francisco, and it really helped me put a vocabulary to what I was doing. And so that really helped. And then I started doing readings about 16, 17 years ago. And I've always done them over the phone, which a lot of people find very confusing. And they always ask, well, how can you read energy if you know somebody's not right in front of you? And the way I always explain it is energy just simply exists. So whether someone's thousands of miles away or right in front of you, we have the ability to connect. So, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I do readings every day, and I have the majority of my clients I've never met. And yeah, so that's what I do on a daily.
So cool. So I want to go back to like Julie, your imaginary
Yeah.
friend. Because
Yes.
I'm curious about this. And I never had an imaginary friend. Um, I just was not checked in like that as a kid. But I want
Yeah.
to know, like, did you see her? What was that experience like, for
Yeah.
you as a kid? What did she look like? How did you
Mhm.
know she was there? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I can still visualize her so clearly because she looked like an 8-year-old girl. And I was probably 4 at the time, and I remember she was a little older than me. But it was very, like, exactly how you would picture maybe like a spirit or something. She had this, like, long flowing white dress on, and I remember her having this, like, kinda, like, short, almost, like, blondish hair. She kinda looks black and white in my mind, but I can kinda see flashes of, color of what she looked like. But yeah, white flowy dress, kinda like short hair, and she was just slightly older than me. And I remember her just kinda coming down kind of from the sky in a sense. So, I can't really
So
remember what we talked about, though. I think I have it written down somewhere a few years ago when I kinda channeled about it, but can't really remember what we talked about.
would you talk to her out loud? Did your parents know, like, because I've heard stories or, seen movies and stuff where the imaginary friend has to come along to everything and,
It wasn't really like that. It was more of like she was there and I just talked to her like telepathically, and I never took her, with me, and we never like played games together, anything like that. It was more just it just seemed so normal and so natural. It was like, "Oh, my friend's here," and she's here. She's going to talk to me. It was just very like a loving and comforting sort of vibe. But it was definitely all telepathic.
So now that you are very tuned into your abilities and have a clear understanding of your own beliefs and the energy you work with, what do you think Julie was? Was she a spirit? How do you see her now?
Yeah, I just see her as like she was one of my original spirit guides, someone to bring me comfort and love and expansion when I was young. And maybe she just showed up, so I had the story to tell today. Whatever it is. But yeah, I think she was just a spirit guide, and I think a lot of us, or all of us, actually have like guides and angels and spirits that are connected to us that have a very specific purpose, and they change. Some are with us our whole lives, and some change as we go along. And yeah, I think she was just there to kind of open me up and show that this kind of stuff exists, and it's okay to be a little weirdo.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I sense. She was there to kind of show you like, oh, there's other ways to communicate. There's other beings out there that don't just look like these 3D humans in front of us. Do you ever get communication from her, or when did you stop if you don't?
You know what? I think she was just around for a couple years, maybe kind of between 4 and 6-ish. And then she just kind of went away, but I don't remember like missing her. It's just like, kind of like, oh, okay, she doesn't come around anymore. Like, no big deal. And but I did a channeling with her many years ago now. I don't even know where it is, but it's somewhere. But I don't really ask for her anymore. I usually now when I talk to, I channel other beings, I channel another group of light beings. But maybe I should see what she's up to.
I know. I'm so curious. Well,
Yeah.
my mom grew up in haunted houses, so she always told me stories of like ghosts and spirits. And I don't know, like what you talk about seems like a ghost. Do you think there's like a difference or between, like ghosts or spirits who are kind of stuck in this realm versus maybe Julie who what is the difference there in
Yeah.
your eye?
So yeah, I see a really big difference when I think of, and I might not be accurate, but this is how I see it. When I see ghosts, or people who are more stuck in between, I usually see people who have passed but can't quite get over to the other side, or maybe they're still looking for something, or there's something traumatic that happened, and they're just kind of looking for a little assistance or light or direction of where to go. They're just a little lost, sometimes. And so that was very different because Julie was definitely not lost. She was like there specifically for me to communicate with me and just be there, with me. But yeah, she definitely wasn't lost. There was definitely a purpose for her being there. And I feel like ghosts are kind of just lost.
Like random kind of like, oh, I ran into you, whoops, or you're still here.
Yeah. Or just don't know where to go, and they're just looking for some direction or light because sometimes they're just kind of confused.
Yeah. Nick says, Melinda Gordon said that children can see spirits more on that show, Ghost Whisperer. And it kind of ties into children expressing their moon more, being more intuitive. Now that you have daughters of your own, do you notice that with them, that they're just more intuitive or open to these things than maybe adults that you work with?
Yeah, I've definitely tried to make a habit of it to open them up to this very young, because I know how nice it was to have my parents really supportive of this stuff, and that I just want them to be just like open, expansive to knowing that there's just so much more to this world and beyond than what we are told or what we even mentally think. And I definitely have taught them some skills to bring this out in themselves. And sometimes I even hear them bring like, okay, wait, let me my younger daughter will just do this, like I don't know where she got this from, but she'll just do this and be like, let me just get my visual. And like, let me do a reading on you. So but maybe sometimes it's just play and fun, but they still know that they can tap into that. And so I think it's really important to like teach our kids these skills young, because they they don't get it in regular public education or anything like that. And it's just really nice to have this next wave. And I already see this in kids that have been born the last 10 years and that are being born now. I keep seeing that these really enlightened beings are kind of coming to our earth to help, I think, shift us into this new earth that we are kind of expanding into.
I totally agree. And I think, especially your generation, my generation, like you said, like nobody knew I was a weirdo. You're really lucky that your parents were so open to it. But I think me personally, like I was feeling a lot of things, maybe not like from other beings or other realms, but I was just really sensitive, and my parents did not know how to handle that. They were just like, you're just really difficult,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
just being open, and teaching kids like it's okay to be able to feel these things and how to work with them.
Yes, and that's what shuts so many kids down because, a lot of people say that kids are kind of really open till about 7, 8 years old, and then things kind of start shifting because they're starting to match the vibration of the rest of this earthly world. And so it's really important to kind of like support these kids because a lot of kids that do have these sensitivities and are really connected, they don't have any really support system for it. So they think that they are a weirdo, or they shut this down, or they think that it's wrong, or they think that they're hearing voices in their head and that's a bad thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole other, I'm sure
Yes.
a lot of kids that were hearing voices that their parents were like, you need to be on this medication, or like that's not normal. So,
Yes.
um, oh, Diane says I had lots of imaginary friends as a kid. She is a Scorpio stellium, moon in Virgo, but I frequently wondered if they were spirits I was sensing. I'm sure they were, Diane. I'm sure they were beings communicating with you in some way. And it's so cool to be able to have these conversations now, because even personally, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if someone told me like I had an imaginary friend as a kid, I would be like, oh, you were a weird kid. Like,
Yep.
what's going on up there? And now that I've opened myself up to these things, I'm like, that's so cool. I wish I had an imaginary friend too.
Well, once you kind of start getting into all this stuff, you realize that there's so many more people who are really into this stuff. And that's not really a weird thing anymore. It's becoming so much more normal, and that I feel like the more you open up to this stuff, the more you continue to bring people in who have the same vibration or are looking for the same things and have had the same experiences.
And I think part of being open to your guides, your angels, spirits, all these things is literally just that, being open, being
Yes.
open-minded, knowing that it exists and being willing to see things as signs versus just like, oh, there was a butterfly that flew by, being like, oh, that's my sign for this guide or whatever. So,
Yeah.
like you said, kids are just already open and they just have these
Yeah.
natural intuitive abilities, and we need
And
to get them young.
yeah, and the symbol that you actually just mentioned, that's actually something that like anybody can do right now, is just like to make a list of certain things that mean something to you. It might a butterfly might be something, maybe transformation, is coming or something like that. But if you write a list, it's actually a really good way to communicate with beings or guides or anybody who's trying to send you messages, to be able to say, hey, if I see a butterfly, this is what it means. And so you kind of have a list. So it's kind of like creating a little dictionary for your guides,
Mhm.
to be able to say like, to be able to communicate to you if you can't already hear them or see them. So that's just like a nice, easy way.
Yeah, that was what unlocked things for me, because I'm not clairaudient, really, I'm or at least not now. But once I started being like, oh, I keep seeing this thing over and over again. I just saw a butterfly fly by. I just looked up and saw it. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So let's fast forward a little bit. Julie kind of fades away. She doesn't come back anymore. When did you start to realize, like, I'm still able to sense other energy, or maybe not everybody had an imaginary friend, maybe not everybody is as open as I am? When did that awareness come in?
Well, I feel like I always kind of felt like I knew something just like slightly deeper than maybe the layer that most people could see things at, like really being able to pick up on the energy of people. Mostly like I would be very like, I really knew who I wanted to like be around, and I definitely knew who I'm like, nope, I don't want to go over there, or nope, I don't want to be around this person, or so I kind of, and I was always able to read people really well and kind of know what they needed or needed to do. And I feel like I always kind of had that always. But I would probably say it wasn't until like my maybe when I was 20 that I kind of started getting into the healing stuff. And my sister actually, she was starting to get into Reiki. And I remember I had hurt my like I had cut my toe open, and she kind of put her hands over it and was doing Reiki, and I could feel it so intensely, the energy coming into my body, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? Like I could feel this. And that's actually what really started getting me into Reiki. And that was kind of the jumping off point into the rest of the healing and psychic stuff.
I love that you brought up your sister, because, in our friend group, I feel like there's such power in people who might be farther along in their journey or in their spiritual abilities, recognizing the power in you. It's like a witnessing, right? Like someone being
Mhm.
like, oh, wow, like you're really sensitive to energy. And you're like, oh, I am. I kind of felt that, but I didn't realize it until someone else showed it
Validated it.
or
Mhm.
did it on me, did Reiki on me.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that she kind of paved the way for you in that sense. And I love you two still work together and, you know, do healings together and things like that, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. And she was a start to help kind of, create be inspired light as well. So yeah, she works with me as well.
So cool. So cool. So you started doing Reiki and you mentioned that you realized when you were doing Reiki, you were doing more than just Reiki. Describe that a little bit more. Like,
Mhm.
what were you doing?
Yeah, yeah. So I think Reiki was a really good way to just kind of like open up those just to like, open up the energy, in my body and my spirit to be able to receive and basically bring in a higher light, a higher guidance, basically. And but with Reiki, it's like a process of putting symbols into somebody's body and kind of seeing and just basically clearing and moving energy. I mean, it's more in depth than that too. But when I would put my hands over somebody, I would see all the things that maybe why something started or somebody had a question. I'd hear all the information that was behind it, what they needed to do, how to heal something. Sometimes what was going to happen. So I was seeing like a lot of visuals because I've always been very clairvoyant. And so clairvoyant being your ability to see things through your mind's eye. So auras, visuals, just pictures, anything visual. And so I always saw like pictures, and sometimes they're symbolic. Sometimes it's just like, hey, this is a symbolic visual of what's going on. And sometimes I could actually see into somebody's body and being like, oh, there's a blockage in here. And it was caused because of this, and then, clearing it out. But basically what I noticed the difference is just the amount of information that was coming through that I needed to speak out and to share to the person rather than just, bringing the light and energy into their body to heal them. So it was kind of more of my calling to speak up more about what the healing needed to be.
So many places we can go from here. So many questions I have now. Let's kind of talk about the clairs really quickly. For people who are
Mhm.
new to psychic abilities, there are several different clairs and ways that people can bring through information. So can you quickly just go through them? And because
Yeah.
somebody might be watching and not realizing, oh, I'm clairaudient or whatever.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So there's clear abilities and it's basically another way of saying like a heightened sensing. And so there's a few of them. So there's clairvoyance, which we were just talking about. It's a clear seeing. And then there's clear audience, which is a clear hearing, which is basically your ability to hear voices, words, songs, information that's inaudible to your physical ears. Then there's clear cognizance, which I'm doing this because it's kind of connected to your seventh chakra. And it's your seventh chakra is kind of everything from beyond yourself. And it's just basically a knowingness there's no reason to know or think or feel something. It's just, oh, I know this. I know that this is true. So that's clear cognizance. Then there's clear sentience, which is, I'm kind of pointing to my second chakra here below my belly button because that's clear feeling and sensing. So that's your ability to feel your emotions of your own, also the ability to feel energy and emotions of others. So this is when people are really empathic or sensitive. Those are the most common ones. And then there's also clear aliens, which is your ability to smell things. Um, that's not a very common one. I think I was telling you earlier that when this comes through for me, it usually comes through with people who have passed that I know and a smell that reminds me of them, like my grandma who smells like Italian cookies when she, comes to say hi. And then there's clear gustance, which is the ability to clear taste. And the way I always explain this one is in a reading, this doesn't come through very often because it's usually just easier to get, a clear audient or clear voyant messages. But maybe I might taste like a metallic taste in my mouth. And it might mean that somebody has issues with heavy metals or that maybe they have too much iron or not enough iron. But so, yeah, you can clear taste, you can clear see, you can clear sense in so many different ways. But those are the basic clear abilities.
And you have been able to bring through information, it sounds like, from all of them at some point, even though maybe some are stronger than others.
Yes, exactly. And we all have the ability to bring it in, through all these different ways, but we're just naturally stronger, in some than others. And some information just comes through more clearly through a visual compared to, something that you hear. So, for example, it might be a lot easier to see somebody that let's say I might see like a visual of somebody who looks really, really tall and thin and, stretched out. And I might get the sense that somebody is stretched too thin, or like their plate is overflowing. So I might see a plate of food, overflowing. But, sometimes it's easier just to hear an expression. I guess that's actually an expression too. But sometimes it might just be easier to hear an expression rather than let me see a whole picture and try to figure out, all the details of what's going on. So information's usually going to come in the quickest, easiest way for you.
I think that's part of being open too, right? Because I've had some really profound experiences that I'm not necessarily looking for. I'm not trying to channel anything. I'm not like, tell me what I need to know and hearing a voice. Like some of the most
Yeah.
profound experiences I've had are just hearing something and being like, oh,
Yes.
okay, where did that come from? I don't know, but I know I was supposed to hear it and now I can't ignore it. So,
Yeah.
and like what you were talking about smelling, just a quick little story here. I was at my dad's house watching his house. He was out of town. He has these pictures, really old vintage photographs of his dad and his grandpa hung on the wall. And I was just kind of, I don't know, walking around the house. I was looking up at the pictures and I very clearly smelled his grandma's perfume, who passed at least 10 years ago now. And I was like, and I mean, luckily I have always been open to these things and very much at this point was, and I was like, oh, hi, you're here, but
Yes.
I was not expecting her, I didn't call her in. It was just very random, and
Yes.
she had a very strong smell. So it was easy to register who it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also, now that I'm talking about family members, I'm curious if you ever get messages through dreams as well, because I've
Mm-hmm.
had people come to me in dreams who've passed on, and I know that's a pretty common thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's funny that you said that because that's actually one of the things I should have mentioned when I was younger. My dreams were always so clear and so vivid and so just vibrant and meaningful, to me, even like when I was very, very young. And definitely dreams give us messages all the time. Yes, of course, sometimes it's hard to know which ones actually mean something, which ones are just, silly dreams. But just today, I actually had a dream that my client at 7 o'clock that are like, it got all jumbled and my kids were coming in and interrupting us. And I was like, I had to put the phone down. And, when I went to call her at 7 this morning, we had got our times confused and we just kind of messed up the time. And so that was also kind of like a little sign to me because even when I woke up in the morning, I'm like, I don't know if my 7 o'clock call happened, so I might be right back in. And so yes, but listening to our dreams is really important, and that list of symbols that we mentioned before is also really good to have for our dreams as well, because that's again an easy ability to communicate with us.
Yeah, my mom was actually just telling me this weekend that she's been having this recurring dream. Like almost every night she has this dream, and it's pretty difficult for her to keep having the dream. And I was like, all I told her, and maybe you have something on this for, her or anybody else who's had a recurring dream or keeps having the same symbols come up, I was like, there's something your subconscious is trying to tell you that you're not dealing with in your waking life. If you keep having it, it's because your subconscious is trying to work it out and your mind is finally resting enough to deal with this, but you keep having it because you haven't dealt with it yet. So I don't know if that's accurate. That's just what I told her. I'm like,
Yeah.
if it keeps coming up, you got to do something about
There's something
it.
there. Yeah, no, 100% agreed. And I would actually recommend that she actually sets an intention every night and even when she wakes up in the morning, because sometimes, information comes through our dreams, but we can also get more clarity on it in our waking life. But I would tell her just to set the intentions that she wants more clarity on what that information is and to kind of go a level deeper with that. And whether it's through her dreams or her waking life.
Yeah, Diane asks, is there a way to tell if a dream is a visitation rather than just a vivid dream?
As far like visitation, I'm assuming you mean kind of like from someone.
Yeah.
And often when it is in your dream, it is usually a visitation, because it's their way, like Olivia was saying, is that like you're kind of more open in a lot of ways when you're in the dream world, let's say. And so when other beings come in, it is usually a visitation. Visitation. It can also be a vivid visitation, but that's how a lot of spirits will come through, because it's sometimes the easiest to come through that way.
Yeah, my dad's father, the night before he passed, came to me in a dream, or maybe the night he did pass, and I woke up and I was like, oh, that was weird. And then I got a phone call, and that was one of my first experiences where I was like, oh, that can't be a coincidence, and just I can still picture he was sitting in a chair with people around him, and he looked at me directly and said, I'm okay. And I was like, whoa, okay. I didn't ask. I mean, I wasn't even that close with him, and I was like, oh, I think maybe he's passing on. And then I got the phone call, and I was like, this is so wild that and then now I'm at a place where I'm like, he came to me, like, he was me.
Yeah, well, because you were open to that. And and then looking at somebody, I think this is also something to kind of keep in mind, is that sometimes you're like, well, was this really him, or was this somebody else? And often, if you can remember in your dream to like really truly like look them in the eyes, that is actually a really good way to connect with them, to see if it is them. Because you'll kind of notice in some dreams, you kind of like, somebody might come to you and you're like, it was kind of like them. It was kind of like someone else also. And when that does happen, you can also ask, like, maybe what is that person symbolic of? Was that somebody, maybe you dreamt about somebody you had a lot of like loving romantic a loving relationship, romantic relationship with them past. And so they might be symbolic of just like love. It might not actually be about them. A lot of people ask me that, like, why did my ex-boyfriend come into my dream last night? And it's like, it's not necessarily about him, or that you have to get in contact with him or anything like that. It could just be symbolic of an experience that you had for him, or the love that you had for each other, or something else like that. So again, it's like, you just want to continue to ask questions about like, what's really underneath this? What was really this trying to, communicate with me?
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back to talking about Reiki and how you were able to see things in the body. And I'm curious, as you said that, where inspired light, or be inspired light, where that came from and the meaning behind your business name.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, what I noticed, especially, so I channel a group of being called, so I do a few different things. So I do my readings, which I use my psychic intuitive abilities for, and mediumship abilities. But then I also channel. And when I'm channeling is being able to kind of like move yourself aside and bring in information or beings or spirits or just energy that's just like outside yourself. It's not yours. And so I channel a group of beings they just call themselves the light beings. And I always noticed that like what they were always telling me was just like love and light, and that's kind of what it was. And it's like, I want really everyone to be able to just like own and embody their own light. And that feeling of, I called it inspired light, inspired light, because I want everyone to be that feeling of like, when you're inspired and everything just feels like energized, everything feels like you have a direction, you feel like you have a purpose, you have fulfillment, you're kind of going towards something. And so just being able to fill ourselves with this light and this inspiration is just like such a wonderful way to just move through the world, and I can see your, words behind you, be the light, so we must both be onto something.
Right. There's a reason love and light is getting more popular, but I love that you have the word inspired in your business too, because I remember the first time I learned that like the meaning of the word inspired is in spirit. When you're inspired by something, you're like really connected to your spirit. And I just think it's such a beautiful addition to light, is really connecting the spirit. And a lot of what you do is not just connecting to your own spirit, but of course, bringing through other spirits and helping people connect as well, which is just so cool. So as you were doing like Reiki and kind of starting doing healings, you said you took some courses, got more vocabulary to explain like what you're doing. Now, do you still do Reiki? Do you still do like healings on people? Or are you mostly just doing readings?
I do everything over the phone, and I always have, like, for 17 years. So this was not a after COVID sort of thing. And it just helps me be able to, well, see more clients, and because I can take them back to back, and I feel like I have the ability to kind of tap in and kind of be more quiet, without somebody in their room. And like I was saying before, it's like, doesn't matter if somebody's energy is, miles and miles away or right in front of you, because it's still just right here in front of you. So I don't really do a whole lot of Reiki anymore. If we some of our friend groups and our friends kind of get together and kind of do healings and stuff in person, and when we are in person, we can use our hands-on abilities to heal, but I mostly focus on readings. But in my readings, it's not that I'm just like, hey, this is what's going on, like, here's the issue, like, see ya. It's kind of more of like, okay, well, here's the issue, now let's heal it, and or work on it or move it out. And so it's not that I'm doing Reiki, because I think Reiki is just it's kind of a separate thing, but I'm doing my own kind of healing process where I identify like what the issue is. And then once you identify what the issue is, what you can do is you want to you want to find it. You want to know if it's like in the physical body. You want to know if it's in the aura. If you want to, kind of even know more specifically, like, okay, this energy, this emotion, this, thing, or this physical ailment is in the liver, let's say, like if we're getting, really specific, or in the cells or something. But once you identify it, you can continue asking questions about it. So you can say, where did this come from? Where did what emotions are connected to this? What does it need to heal it out? So once you identify it, it's kind of like brightening it up, not brightening up, just making it more noticeable in somebody's space. And then what I do is I kind of run a healing energy through it, and I connect it to a channel, let's say, that goes from that person's body up to the sky, to source, to God, your highest vibration, whatever we want to call it. It's kind of like and I think this is a good visual for, anybody that wants to heal anything in themselves, or just to release anything in themselves. Just to like visualize a cord that goes up to the sky, and visualize that connected to anywhere that you need releasing, and just visualize all that energy just separating and dissipating from your physical body, your aura, and just going directly up this channel, and know that it's being recycled and sent back to wherever it needs to go. And then, so once you kind of clear it out of your space, you can ask what I always ask, like, what's the replacement energy for this? What can we bring in instead that's going to be at their best and highest, good? And then you might get a visual for that. You might get a color, you might get a vibration, you might get just words of wisdom. And then you want to visualize putting that into the place where you just removed the thing, because you don't want to just move energy out and just leave it like empty, because then who knows what's going to fill up in there. So you really want to kind of replace it with whatever that area needs the most. And so that's just kind of like a basic way to heal. So I do healings in the readings also.
I love that you incorporate healing for so many reasons, but I think there are a lot of mediums out there. There are a lot of psychics that are just like, this is what it is, that just tell you what they're seeing. And I don't know. I think you might be the only medium that I've ever personally met or come across that actually has this healing component. And being an astrologer, I have to bring it back to your chart. That is like so 12th house energy. The 12th house is all about healing and bringing closure to things. And the fact that your sun is in the 12th house, like that just screams like you're a healer, you're here to heal people. So I love that you do that. Yeah,
that closure makes a lot of sense, with what you're saying, because I always feel like something for me, even energetically, when I'm doing readings, it really needs to come full circle for it to feel complete, for me to be able to get off that phone and be like, yes, this looks good for now, and we can go. Because if it's not, I kind of feel like, well, I can't just let it be, or even I always joke with clients too, when something really exciting is going on in their life, and something's about to happen, and I'm always like, a week later or a couple days later, I'm like, what happened? It's like, wait, it's like watching a movie and like not knowing the ending. So, and that's I talk to a lot of people. I have a lot of like weekly clients, I have, every other week clients, monthly clients, and then just, clients who just call whenever they want. But it's nice because I have clients that I've literally been talking to almost every single week for the last 15 years. And it's so nice to be able to see the progress and the change and the shifts that have happened like over the years. I don't know what made me go off the track on that, but yes, I think healing is very important, not just telling somebody what's wrong, because it just doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious now, like if someone was to come to you as a client,
Mhm.
do they need to come with a certain question? Do you have clients that just show up and are kind of just like, what do you have for me this week? Or how does that
Yeah,
process work?
yeah. So I always explain it as like like some of my clients who I've been talking to for a long time, they're like, just tell me what's going on, and I talk the entire time. But I like with a new client specifically, I always say, come with a few questions in mind, because I just really want people to actually get the information that they want to get, because I could go any direction if I just kind of pull, and I could just pull up their energy and just see what comes up, but it might not be something that they really are interested in knowing, So I really try to have people come with questions so we can really pinpoint really what they want to know. And I always say to like I pull up their questions, but I also pull up their energy in general and just see what's going on. And every reading, and this is sometimes not hard to explain, but it's different. Every reading is different, because I'll get clients who they just need the information. They need to know what's going on, where something came from, like just they need to know the information. And then I have clients who I've never spoken to before, and maybe they want a lot of information, but it's like, gosh, before we bring in all this information, we really need to do a healing. We need to do a clearing. We need to kind of clear all this stuff out, so you're clear enough to be able to get all of this information and fully truly be able to like receive it. So some are more healing focused and some are more information focused, and I just trust that whatever information comes up is what they need to hear and know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I know you've been doing this now for many years. You're very comfortable in your abilities in your business. But when did you know, like, oh, I'm actually good at this and I'm actually helping people? Was there like a confirmation or, a moment where you're like, oh, I was right about that? Or, that kind of it clicked for you, like, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I feel like I've always gotten a lot of good validation, from, clients. My best friend, now, who I actually met because she called me because her dad had passed. And I always joke with her too that I started doing readings with her, and I just fell in love with her energy over the phone, and we've been best friends ever since. And so,
Oh,
uh, she sees a lot of other like psychics and astrologers, and she's, goes to see everybody just for fun and information. And she always tells me, and I know it's not just because she's my best friend, but she always tells me that, my information is super solid. And, and why I bring her up too is because, I think it was in January, I was giving her a reading, and I was actually channeling the light beings for this information. And she was living in San Francisco at the time, and she said, and I said, wow, like, and she was thinking about moving and kind of changing jobs for like many years now. And it just so clearly came through that was like, wow, you're going to get a job like really, really soon, and you're going to be moving to Austin. And I literally called the date. I think it was like April 24th. And she wasn't even looking at Austin. She wasn't even like anything like that. We're like, no, no way. She literally moved on that date. And that's a rarity. Like, and I always like to preface this too, because I use the word psychic, and a lot of people think psychic means like predicting the future. And that's actually something called precognition. But that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions in this whole industry, because a lot of people hear them as psychic and they're like, what's going to happen? When is this going to happen? When am I going to meet my person? And it's not always like that. Yes, future information comes in, but the future is always changing. So some of that information is not really accurate. I really like to kind of focus on the more of like the present time stuff and what we can do now stuff. But just to kind of go back to the word psychic for a moment, is that psychic is really just like this umbrella term for all of our extrasensory abilities. So it's like all of our clair abilities are psychic abilities, our intuition are psychic abilities, mediumship is psychic abilities, channeling is psychic abilities. So I really like to just like demystify that word now, because it's not what everybody thinks it is. It's the all-encompassing word for all of the ways that we can receive information. But to answer your original question, I think I just get little hits of validation, through time. And I think more so than ever, my intuition was just clearly like, this is what you should be doing. You love it and you are excited to do it every day. And I feel like if you ever get that information, it's kind of like, that's just kind of what you want to follow.
Yeah, I've gone through moments too where I'm like, am I really good at this? Am I good at astrology? Am I supposed to be doing this? And then it's like when I ask those questions, somebody's like, wow, that was so spot on, or this really helped me. It's
Yes.
almost like just asking the question and the universe is like, no, we're going to give you the answer that you should be doing this, so I'm always just like, let's know if I'm supposed to do something else, but this seems right for now,
Yeah. Well, I think it's also really important to give that validation to other people. So whether they're just like your friends and they're kind of picking up on something, it's like remembering to validate, other people for their information, because that, well, number one, just makes people feel good and knows that like it helps them be able to trust their intuition. And I feel like that's kind of what we're all trying to like learn to do, is to trust our intuition. And people doubting themselves and doubting their intuition is like really what holds people back the most from continuing to get more of their intuition and really letting it flow. So validating others and yourself, I think is key.
Well, I love that you brought up intuition, because I'm just such a curious person that I'm like, tell me everything about your life. But I do want people to walk away with some like tips to connect to their intuition. So when we talk about psychic abilities, this big umbrella, we all have psychic abilities. We all have these abilities in some capacity, right?
Yes. Yes. We all have these abilities. They're just like innate in us. And like I was saying before, sometimes they're stronger in some than others, but they can all be developed. And I think the way to think about just like intuition is really just that ability to know something without reason. When you have just like no mental reason to like think something, but you just kind of have that hunch or that gut feeling or that even instinct. Instinct and intuition are different, but it's just like kind of like that deeper subconscious knowingness. And I think the first thing when talking about intuition is knowing that to be able to identify what your intuition is probably the most important. It's a little bit different for everybody, but you want to be able to notice it within yourself, because the more you notice it within yourself, the more that just the more that it's going to flow. Oh my God, Olivia, I see a butterfly out my window too.
When I was at your house doing, because we did a healing a few weeks back with a group of friends, and I mean, your house is beautiful, but like right before we went into the healing, because a white butterfly is my sign for my great grandma, a monarch butterfly is a sign for my grandpa, two of my like strongest guides. And right when we started, I looked up right out the window, white butterfly flew by. I'm like, okay, you're here. You want to be part of this. You're helping me channel whatever I need to channel,
Well,
yeah.
when the energy, is around, when we were all, bring this really bright, energy in for like a healing, it's like more of those signs show up. And, this is my office. So this is where I work. And right outside my window, there's always hummingbirds, like right outside. And hummingbirds, people say, are a really good sign of, people trying to, connect with you as well. I've even done videos in here, and then I'll watch my video and I can actually see the spirits in light, and you can see them in the videos, like around me. And so just remembering for everybody to like, the more you raise your vibration, the more aware and conscious, you'll be and see and feel that information, and the more of the energy that, will come through.
And I think, is it also just being like noticing of it, right? Because personally, like I feel like my guides were always there, and it just took an event. I got in this car crash, and I very clearly knew that I was like protected by one of them. I saw a car or a truck that looked exactly like my grandpa's truck right before a car crashed into me, and I instinctively turned the wheel a little bit, and that was like basically what saved me. And then I was like, whoa, you're here, like you're guarding me and protecting me. And since that day, I'm like, okay, well, you've been here the whole time. I might as well start like looking for you and saying hi to you and noticing the signs you're sending me.
Yeah. And what a great, sign right now to everybody to start noticing those things and make your symbol list, so when a butterfly goes by, what it actually means. Because like you said, it's going to be different for everybody. But and just noticing and being aware and being open is like the key to everything almost.
So when you're doing readings, do you ever channel other people's guides and kind of give them the confirmation like, hey, these people are around you? or these
Yes.
spirits?
Yes. Yeah. So specifically, sometimes people ask me like, what am I tapping into, when I'm doing this? And a lot of times I'm it depends on the situation and what I'm asking, but I'm often connecting to just like my highest self, or I'm connecting to their highest self. And sometimes people's spirits or angels or beings will show up around them. And when they do, it's usually like a sign to be like, they want to talk, and then to be able to, tell these guys, tell, let's say, the client or the person, what their spirits, what their guides want to communicate with them. So they definitely show up. And there's, yeah, and there's, I know I'm trying to think of how to put it out here, but maybe I'll do it in person sometime too. But there's some really cool exercises to be able to meet your spirit guide, because I can connect people to their spirit guide, but I really think it's more fun and more meaningful if you can find your own spirit guide, and to be able to really know the vibration and the energy of that guide, because that's what also helps you be able to identify them when they come in again. Because it's like, you'll hear people say how sometimes guides, or energies will come in, but you're like, well, is that really my guide? Is that energy, or is that some like little tricky guide that's, trying to come in here, and it happens. And so you really want to know and feel the vibration of your guide, and know it's them, just kind of like in that dream when I was saying, kind of looking them into the eyes and really kind of notice if it's them. But what was I going to say? That, yeah, you want to notice it's yours. And one of the ways that you can kind of practice knowing this is, and this is for intuition as well, and knowing whether it's your highest guidance or whether it's a spirit's, guidance, is just recognizing spatially where you feel information coming in. You might kind of like, see things and it's just like might be up on your screen, here. But maybe your guide kind of comes in from your top left, over here. And that's kind of how I know. It's like, if my light beings came in from over here somewhere, I'd be like, that's not you guys, So it's like knowing spatially where information comes in can be also really helpful. And then also being able to differentiate, like, oh, am I just hearing this in my mind? Is this something my mental mind is telling me? Or, a judgmental voice of a parent, a friend, a spouse, society, culture. And so being able to differentiate that mental information from that intuitive information is really important too.
Right, because in your workshops, you talk about how intuition is neutral. If you feel a strong emotion with, a thought that's coming in, or maybe something you're hearing or seeing, it's probably not intuition. It's probably linked to judgment or, emotion.
Yes, exactly. Because emotions are a way that, we communicate with ourselves, right? Like, emotions are extremely important. And I always explain the emotion sort of thing, like we want to be connected to our emotions, but we also don't want to hold on to our emotions for too long. We really just want the information behind the emotion. And my little example that I always give for this is, like, if you were a kid in a store and you stole something and then you got caught, you might feel shame and blame and embarrassed and, ridiculed or whatever, but you don't want to be going through life holding on to those emotions. So the information behind that would really be, hey, this doesn't feel good to steal. I'm not going to do it again. And so I think it's really good practice for us to identify what's behind emotion, so we don't hold on to the emotions and we just hold on to the information. But yes, like you were saying, that intuition, or so you want to be able to separate what your emotions feel like compared to your intuition. And your intuition it feels light, it feels neutral, it feels calm, it feels like just like a gentle guidance, or a direction or a knowingness. It can just be like a simple, yeah, I feel like a yes, or I feel like a no, or something feels off about this, or, something just feels right. And I know with like our friend group, when we're talking about getting together, and, we're always like, I'm getting a no on that. I don't know why I want to go, but I feel like I'm not going to be there. And I think it's so cool because we all support each other in, whatever our intuition is telling us. And for whatever reason, it's telling us that. And it's knowing too that it's also, your intuition, yes, will never make you feel fearful. It'll never make you feel like worried or concerned. It'll never feel like abrasive or judgmental. I think judgmental is a really good one, that it's never judgmental. And yeah, so I really think that being able to identify what's your intuition, what's your emotions, and what's your just mental mind talking into is kind of like the first steps to being able to just like listen and trust and take action on this. And those are the words I always say, to listen, trust, and take action, because the more you do that, it's kind of like it's a communication to the world, to the universe, that's saying like, hey, I got it. Thank you for this information. I received it, and I'm gonna do something about it. And the universe is like, awesome, cool, you got the message. Let me send you more. And that's kind of how your intuition just continues to flow stronger and just expands.
I love this through message throughout this conversation about just asking more questions. And I think that's something that keeps coming through anytime I learn from you. It's like, always be willing to ask more questions. What is there a certain format you use? I mean, a lot of times my question I ask, even when I'm just like pulling an oracle card on our live stream every morning, I literally say out loud, what do I need to know? You know, because I'm just like, that's very clearly, what do we all need to know today? You know, words have power. Our words are spells. That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But do you have a certain structure you use when you're doing readings and asking questions, or that you teach people to use?
Yeah. So I think it's always, if you don't know what to ask, I always say the words, what is in my best and highest good? You know, what do I need to know for my best and highest? Or is this decision in my best and highest good? So you can always do that. But whether meditating about something or just really trying to like do a reading on yourself or others, I think the things to keep in mind are to really be specific. I think sometimes we get nervous to ask like too specific of a question, because it's like, well, what if I don't know the answer to that? Or what if I just don't know that? But remembering that you don't have to know it, that information is just going to, come in and you'll be able to receive it. But to ask specific questions, meaning also not to use like nondescript words, like the words like enough or success or should I do something, because there's not often a should, or is this good enough? Well, is it good enough for what? Like what is your intention? And so I think it's really good to include intentions in what you want, and your information, even if you don't ask quite the right question, the answer is always going to come through with what you're really intending to ask. And then also remember not to ask like compound questions. So you don't want to say, am I going to get this job and love it? It's like, well, you might get the job, but you might not love it, right? And so, and if that ever happens, the information is always going to be answering the first question as well. So I think that's a really good kind of way to ask questions, and also set the intentions that the information that you're going to get is going to be like accurate, helpful, useful, and actionable. I think that actionable is really good, because a lot of times you might get information, but it's like, well, what do I do with this information? It's like, is this even important for me to know if I can't do anything about it? I mean, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. But I think setting those intentions, are really good too.
Is it important to know who you're asking or what you're asking when you're asking these questions? Do you think it's important for people to have some sort of belief behind them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I mean, I feel like no matter what belief that you have, I think it's just important to, number one, remember that no matter what, your highest self is going to have the best information for you. That no matter what guide or any other being that you might be channeling or anything like that, you are still going to know what's best for you. So I always like to, if you're in doubt, to just set the intention that you're asking your highest self. If you want to connect and say, God, the universe, source energy, that's all good too, because really it's all the same thing. So as long as you're setting the intention that you're, connecting to love and light, I think you're going to be good.
Even our conversation a couple weeks ago with Veronica Lee was all about the Akashic records. She said the same thing, because, we have so many labels now, like, where is this information coming from? And she's like, it's all the same. It's just all different labels. It's all different ways of accessing it. But truly, it's all oneness, collective consciousness, love, light, God, the universe, your guides. They're all the same. They're all part of the same energy.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, the other thing I was going to say on intuition too is just to remember, when differentiating like what's in your mental mind that blocks us so often, is that your mental mind really only sees things from a limited perspective. And your intuition sees things from a broader, higher perspective. And your intuition takes into account things that your mental mind just doesn't know. And, the example that I gave at the workshop, this weekend, was that I feel like we've all had an experience like this when we're rushing to get out of the house and we hear a little voice in our head or something that says, grab your jacket. And you're like, your mental mind immediately takes over. And it's just like, I don't need a jacket. I'm going to be home by 3 and it's going to be a beautiful day. But little did your mental mind know that you're going to go out to dinner with your friends. You're not going to be home till 9 o'clock and it was kind of cold. And you kind of say to yourself, oh man, I knew I should have grabbed my jacket. And so really being able to listen to those small little voices, that you hear, just like that quick little fleeting thought. And then, and those are like the little things in life. And then like with the bigger things in life, it's kind of like a stronger, deeper knowingness. And you'll notice that when there are big decisions, let's say, to make, that they don't really go away. They just kind of keep nagging and you kind of need to take action on something.
For me too, it kind of goes back to having your signs, and it might not even be signs from people on the other side. Like I have certain numbers I see that clearly represent people or situations in my life. And sometimes when I'm just like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Or is this the friendship I'm supposed to be having, or whatever? It almost always, I immediately see that number somewhere or see that sign somewhere. And so, it's like developing your own language with the universe almost. And I think that's a really great actionable place for people to start, because it can feel really intimidating to be like, okay, I want to develop my intuitive abilities. Where do I start? But I love how you talked about just making a list, like almost a directory, even in your phone, that you can add to or observe, and asking for those signs or asking questions, knowing that the signs mean different things.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to like make your own, because you can pick up those books that have like symbols, like dream books. Like, what does it mean if I see, this in my dream? But I think it's really important to make up your own, because it's really just like it's an individual conversation, with yourself and your highest self.
And we talk a lot about dreams on the morning live streams, because sometimes I'll be like, who had vivid dreams last night? And everybody's like, me, But I always tell people, when I even have asked, like, does anybody have a good dream meaning book? Because all the websites, they're all vastly different, right? The meanings. And I'm like, where are these coming from? Like, but I always just like use my intuition. And if I'm looking for clarity on something, I just kind of let my intuition lead me, and I'll kind of go through the different descriptions. And if something resonates, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And I guess some people could see that as like searching for meaning in something, but I don't, that kind of is what it is. And I'm just open to, like, I'm trying to make sense of it. Is there anything out there that can help me make sense of it?
Right. Yeah. And I think it's just remembering to write all of it down, especially with dreams. Like, write your dreams down, but write these symbols down, because you're going to wish you had written all these things down like a year later when you have a very similar dream. And it's like, what did it mean then? And has it changed? And I think also one of the things that I recommend, with like students when they're first starting to read energy, is that sometimes it really helps to speak it out loud. And just like in a dream, when you might have a dream, you're like, I don't really know what that meant. But as soon as you go, tell your friend what the dream was, you'll notice that as you put it into words, you might use certain expressions or certain, like just words that kind of like are like, oh, that's what that meant. So really actually verbalizing things can help you understand what the meaning of something is too.
And even journaling too, right? Because I think our mind moves so quickly, like, oh yeah, that dream, okay, that's what happened, that's what it looked like, whatever, that was weird. But then when you start to like write it or speak it and use your words, it's like, oh, I'm seeing patterns here. And I love that you just said that, as Rachel commented, thank you for all this information. I know I've always had some sort of intuition, but I've always felt ashamed of it or feared it, starting to open myself up slowly to it. And Rachel is like a regular on all of our live streams, but it's really cool seeing people comment, because that is a way of like processing your emotions and validating yourself and what you're feeling, and making sense of the world by just sharing what's going on with you. Diane says, I keep a dream journal, write the date, moon phase, and the dream, and then an analysis. And I frequently look back when there are synchronicities. Oh, you are like advanced, Diane.
Yes.
Amazing.
Well, I definitely recommend everyone keeping a notebook by their bed, because you know how many times you wake up and you're like, oh, I had the coolest, craziest dream, but now I can't quite remember it, you know? And even if like you can't really see what you're writing, even if you can just kind of like wake up and just write, you know, something down, that'll just kind of help you. And the other thing that I always love to say about dreams is that when you notice that you are waking up, don't move your body. Like, it sounds silly, but like, don't move your body, because you'll be able to just remember your dreams right away. But as soon as you start kind of waking up your physical body, you start going into like a different mode. And that's when your dreams start the memory of your dreams start going away. And I think we've talked about it too, Olivia, how sometimes we'll lay back down like the next night, and then my dreams will come to me from the night before, because I've kind of like laid back down and relaxed again. So so those are a couple other little tips to use too.
Yeah. And I think you've said too before that like you've practiced being able to go back into a dream or almost like pick up where you left off, because you are so attuned to being in that state. And of course, your own intuition and knowing what things feel like for you. But I mean, that is essentially kind of the same thing as like astral traveling, or being able to like enter another realm. And like you said, setting an intention, what you recommended for my mom. Like, I intentionally want to go back into this place and learn more information from where that's coming from.
Yeah, I want to talk about astral travel here for a minute, because it's like, I love it. I might actually teach a course on it too, but
Please do.
yeah, it's one of the cool things is like, it's kind of like our symbol journal, but it's coming up with the things. Do you ever like do things in your dreams where you're like, you know, you cannot do that in your waking life? Like, do you ever have dreams where you're just like doing like 20 pull-ups? Sometimes I have those dreams and it's like a way to like know to myself that I'm like, I have to be dreaming right now, because I know I cannot do 20 pull-ups in real life. And so the more you can come up with, or like, this is like another silly one, but it's like, I don't know if you're ever like dreaming and you're like trying to use your phone in your dream and it's like not quite working, or it's not quite connecting, or you don't know how to use it. That's just one of mine. But being able to notice that like, hey, this is something that only happens in my dreams. And in that moment, you can kind of wake up and be like, and you know, kind of be a little bit more lucid and be like, hey, I'm dreaming, and try not to go into like fear mode or like, oh no, like, you know, and pop out of it. But the more that you can kind of recognize when you're in a dream, that can allow you to kind of move around in that dream too. And there's one other kind of like really silly tip, but I love this, and it's so silly, but it works. So I read this in a book one time that is kind of the same concept, like how to be aware of when you're in a dream and when you're in waking life. But they said just like to pull your finger, and you know, in real life, your finger doesn't go anywhere, right? But if you are dreaming, your finger like stretches. So it really stretches, and it's like kind of like almost like Gumby, you know? And it sounds so silly, but if you do that throughout the day, you then actually start doing it in your dreams. And so then that'll kind of help like wake you up in your dreams too. But for some reason I love that, and it has totally worked for me.
It's starting like the pattern of like, oh, I do this normally, so of course my subconscious is going to do it in my dream, and then you're like, oh, that's not normal. That's not
yeah. And also it's really kind of good to like know, like even think to yourself beforehand, if you're really trying to focus on your dreams and astral travel and stuff like that, it's like to actually think of ahead of time, well, what would I do? Where would I go if I do wake up in my dream? Because you can go anywhere and do anything. And because I think a lot of times what stops people too is like, once you do kind of wake up in your dream, you're like, well, what do I do? Or where should I go? You know? And so kind of having yourself kind of prepared for that too would be good.
Yeah, kind of going back to setting the intention, like, is there anything I want to work through, or anything I want to learn, or just any little journey I want to go on? Diane says she's going to try the finger trick. So
yes,
I love that. So as we kind of wrap up our conversation, I know there are a lot of people watching who are on the beginning of their journey with their intuition, myself included. I know I still have a lot to learn. What, other than making the directory like we talked about, are there any other things, actionable items people can start with or do today to just begin that journey of opening up their intuitive or psychic abilities?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that too. It's like you're working on them too, and so am I. And it's like it's a lifelong process. We're always going to be developing and expanding our intuition and our highest self. So no matter how long any of us have been doing this, we're always learning and growing. But the things I definitely recommend, I'm sure you'll maybe, share my website, but on my website, there's a little tab called exercises, and there's like 3 or 4 like basic exercises. And if you go up to exercises at the top, there's some really pretty like illustrations that go along with it. But there's grounding, there's highest vibration, there's clearing your energy out of, clearing other people's energy out of your space, and then bringing other people's energy in. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Clearing other people's energy out of your space and bringing your highest vibration in. If you kind of work on just doing these like every single day, it's going to really help you get aligned with yourself, and then also be able to differentiate your energy from other people's energy and create a really clear space around you. And that's going to really help you be open to start receiving your information. So that's a really good step if you're like just starting and you're like, I don't know what to do. There's also, so I have a full, the Inspired Intuition course, and the first module of that is free. So I really go over like the basics. We go over like intuition, how to sense it, how to track it. We go into like the clear abilities, all the chakras, kind of all the basics that some people know, some people don't. But you can go to that and sign up. That's also on the website. Like there's just like sign up for free module 1, and it'll give you access to all of that information. And you can also see in there kind of like what the rest of the course has to offer. And basically. So it has like energy. I'll just read it from the screen. Energy and intuition. The timeless tools are some of the tools that you saw on the website, like the grounding, the boundaries, how to run energy. And then, there's actually 2 modules, or actually, no, there's like practicing how to get into the zone. That's what I call it, because a lot of people are like, well, how I can't just sit down and be like, okay, I'm ready for this information, because that's hard. So there's kind of a process to help clear space and kind of get into the right neutral kind of mindset, so you're actually open to receive. And then there's 2 modules about reading just how to read energy, and just different techniques and the process, and how to ask the questions, and how to it gets really in depth. And then and how to read others as well. And then there's 2 modules on healing. So there's like basic healing, and then there's like in that last module, there's some really advanced healing techniques. So a lot of those are for people who are like, I know how to do this. I know how to tap into energy. I'm really intuitive, and I kind of need those. Where do I go from here? So it really takes you from people who are kind of like beginners and just like, hey, I'm starting this, to people who are like, hey, I know how to do this, but I need more. I need more. I need more techniques. I need more strategies. And so and this course is it's like go at your own pace. It's like lifetime access, and which, like I was saying, it's like some people might be taking this class for years and just kind of going, their own pace. And some people maybe fly through it and be like, wow, I have so many, techniques, new techniques to try.
I go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's all these, like, I had my friend who's an amazing illustrator in San Francisco, and she made all the illustrations for it. And there's also a full session of audio meditations for a lot of like exercises to try and do, because sometimes it's like you don't want to be like reading all the things that I wrote while you're trying to do a reading. And so there's a whole list of audio meditations that'll like actually guide you through the steps, all the timeless tools, and all the steps to actually do readings as well.
I think I'm glad we brought this up, because I meant to ask you, you can do readings on yourself, and that's something not a lot of people talk about. Do you do readings on yourself? Because I know you teach other people how to read themselves.
Yeah, rarely ever. Like I don't. But like if there really was something, I don't always. You know what? If it was for me, I don't really do readings on myself very often. I might not actually sit down to do a reading. I actually might, if I was asking for myself, I'd actually probably channel it from my light beings, or I might just kind of get like more of like that fleeting thought, intuition that comes in to be like, oh yeah, I did break my ankle. Yep. Or something like that. And I feel like, and this is kind of what I always say too. It's like, there's some things that you just know, and you don't have to actually sit down and do a reading, and like allowing that to be enough too. Like I remember when I met my husband I don't know, 10 years ago, a client of mine said, well, did you do a reading on him yet when I first met him? And I was like, no, I just never needed to. Like, I just knew. I'm like, that's my guy, you know, and like, I never really had to look into it. And so just trusting the way that information comes in different ways.
I love that. And I feel like you're always doing readings on yourself in a way, because you are very aware and tapped in, you know, you're very into your intuition all the time. So I just sense that you don't have to like go into the space to be like, what's going on with me? You're just always kind of there. But the last thing I want to point out too is that you're in this beautiful office space that I've been lucky enough to be in at your beautiful home. Is it important for people to have kind of either an altar or a safe space or somewhere that's kind of, maybe you don't need a whole room or an office, but just somewhere that's kind of special to be able to tap in? Is that helpful?
I think it's absolutely helpful. I think the most important thing that I've noticed with people is you just want to know that you're not going to be distracted, because it's really more about not being in your mental mind. And if you're thinking about like, okay, what time is it? My kids are going to, you know, come in, or what's my grocery list? Or, you know, is somebody going to call? Do I have my phone off? It's the distractions that kind of pull you into the mental. So whether you are literally hiding like in a closet, sitting on your shoes and it's quiet and you feel good mentally about that, that's almost like more important than it being like a really special place. I mean, that would be great if you have a special place, but it's really about how can I know that I can turn my mental mind off?
Knowing that the kids or the dogs or the cats aren't going to come in and distract you. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I love to end each of these conversations with an oracle card pull, and I'm going to pull from the Rose Oracle today because, I mean, this is just feels like your vibe. And as I'm doing that, can you just share any other tips, any other ways people can work with you? What else do we need to know about you before we let you go?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, you can reach out anytime. You can email me or text me, you know, through my website if you want to schedule a reading. I book up about a week, maybe a week and a half before usually. So just get in touch with me anytime. If you have any questions about the course, you can also ask me about that. But I would just say, like, sign up for the module 1, kind of get a feel for, you know, kind of how like my course is set up, and if you see if it kind of like vibes, you know, with you. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. And I feel like just like my purpose and my intentions for creating the inspired light and, you know, doing, you know, readings and teaching people how to do this for themselves is that, you know, I just want everybody to feel like they can connect to their highest self, and that they can have access to all of this information and feel just like guided, you know, through life, because it's a good feeling to be able to know that you always have that guidance and support that's always leading you in the right direction.
Yes. And as Brett mentioned, the first module is free. So, you know, there's a link, it should be down in the description of this video, where you can just click, try out the first module. Also, I always say with any healer, psychic, medium, any spiritual guide that you are working with, it's kind of going back to using your intuition. Like, you'll know, you know, you'll know that you're supposed to get a reading from this person. Or if you're just like, wow, I just want to keep hearing her talk, I want to keep hearing what she has to say, then that's, I think, the universe, your guides telling you, hey, listen to this, keep working with her, you know. I actually, before I met Brett, I was looking for a psychic, and I kept trying to find psychics here locally in Sacramento, and I would call them and they'd be booked out or they'd be closed or whatever. And I was listening to a podcast, and randomly a guy was like, I saw a psychic named Jennifer in Sedona. I immediately Googled Jennifer in Sedona, booked the reading the next day. So, you know, it's just, there's sometimes just a knowing that I'm supposed to keep working with this person. Or
yeah, well, that just actually, Olivia, reminds me of how we first met, because we were at that, it was the Lionsgate
portal.
Yeah, it was the
last
Lionsgate
year.
portal. It was last year, exactly. And I had been doing like people were asking questions, and I was just like channeling information, and you came up afterwards and was like, I'm just really drawn to you. And do you remember that? And you were just like, I don't know if you said we should hang out, or like, you know, can we exchange information or something, but you were just drawn and you trusted that intuition. And here we are a year later and hanging out all the time.
I know. And I remember I asked you, Because you were giving like collective information. It wasn't, we were in a big circle, and I was like, is there something special about Sacramento? Because I mean, I grew up here, but it feels like there's something special. And you were like, yes, there's something special going on here. That's what all
There
is. Yes. And
it is.
yeah.
There is. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull a card. I've shuffled these up really good, and I'll just ask, what do we need to know for our best and highest good? The card is Trust the Seasons, embracing change, cycles of life, transition, and growth, which feels very spot on for the current energy. We're in a very transformational portal in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different cultures this time of year. But I'm going to read what the guidebook says and see what else wants to come through. Here we go. Trust the seasons. Our disconnection from the earth and her seasons leads us to believe that we should be in full bloom all year round, that we should grow, grow, grow without leaving space to cut back. When we focus on the never-ending bloom, we forget the importance of all of life's phases. The rose, like all of nature, teaches us this every day. She's forever showing us how to embrace the ever-changing seasons in an ever-changing world. We're not meant to stay the same. Relationships aren't meant to stay the same. Life isn't meant to stay the same. Nothing on this planet is meant to stay the same. The seasons teach us that. Night and day teach us that. We may return to a place, a person, but things won't be exactly as they were, for everything and everyone is forever changing. Nothing is static. The more we try to control things and keep them the same, the further away from the flow of life and ourselves we get. Change can be scary, for it means surrendering to the unknown of being in the in-between, to being not who you were and not quite who you'll become. It requires a trust in the transformation, in the death in order for the rebirth to occur, and a deep reverence for all the seasons of our life. The more we resist change, the further away we are from who we're becoming. When we embrace change, we embrace life and nature and are forever becoming. Is there anything that came up for you?
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. That really resonates too. Of course, just the trust, and we're talking about trusting ourselves and trusting our intuition, but also that's actually part of this concept of be inspired light as well, because I notice for myself, and I know not everybody is like this, but I'll kind of go in these like waves of inspiration. And when I'm on kind of like that wave of inspiration, everything is just like literally flowing through me. All the information, everything I have to do, everything I have to like write up, all the courses I need to, do all the things, and just like allowing that to be in the flow and like just riding that wave, and knowing too, when that's over, that that's not a bad thing, that then that's giving you time to rest and recoup and be able to kind of receive, but not necessarily take action now. And so having that balance between resting and taking action, I think is just so important and really vibes with me.
Yeah, and your intuition is what's going to tell you what you're supposed to be doing, what phase you're in, right? If you're feeling inspired. I mean, inspiration is kind of tied to intuition, in my opinion, right? Like if you're like, oh, I'm so inspired by this, it feels like that's my intuition. Like this is what you're supposed to do right now, And just, I know some of the beautiful people watching are in those seasons of transition and not quite able to figure out what's next, but also very much aware that they're not who they used to be. So I feel like this is coming back to the word validation of just trusting that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Trusting, if you found this video, that you were meant to hear this conversation today. You were meant to connect with Brett in some way, shape, or form today. And you were meant to trust your own intuition and dive deeper into your own intuitive abilities too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, out of your busy schedule, to share your light, your gifts with us, to teach us more about our own intuition. And I just love learning about you and your story, because you're such a unique individual, and I'm just so grateful for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you too. I really appreciate it, and I had a lot of fun today.
I did too. I love knowing that you're a Gemini rising and an Aquarius moon now. I know you better, and now I understand you better, which just that makes me super happy. So thank you to everybody who joined us, who asked questions, who gave their insights. I appreciate you all. We'll be back with another episode of The Spiritual Journalist next week. One more thank you to you, Brett. And until I see you next, stay curious.
Thank you so much for joining our discussion today. If you enjoyed this episode of The Spiritual Journalist, you can find more on thespiritualjournalist.com, or you can listen to our conversations wherever you enjoy podcasts. And if you want to learn more about astrology, join me live every weekday morning on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for Transits Today, where we break down the energy of the day based on the movement of the planets and start our morning off in a high vibe. All of the information we share on The Spiritual Journalist is completely free to you. So if you'd like to support more content like this, the easiest way to do so is to subscribe to our YouTube page. Head over to the Spiritual Shop on our website and buy yourself a little something. Or if you're feeling extra generous, you can buy me a coffee to fuel future live streams. Just tap the link in the description or head to buymeacoffee.com and search The Spiritual Journalist. I'm so grateful you found us here, and I can't wait for our next conversation.